And we are live. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Fixture Focus, where we speak to supporters of clubs that West Ham are about to play. Our next match is on New Year's Day, the first game of 2020 in the new decade. We'll be hosting Bournemouth at the London Stadium. The reverse fixture back in trying to see when it was. I believe it was in September.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, September 28th. It was a draw. It was Bournemouth 2, West Ham 2, and for that was the game. Lucas Fabianski got hurt, our goalie, and really things. While it wasn't an awful result, things certainly did take a turn for the worse, sort of around that time for West Ham at least. But I do want to introduce my guest before we get into that, Kimberly from Orlando. Kimberly, how's it going?
Good, I can't complain. I mean, I guess I can with the way the season's going, but
Yeah, you and I both. I'm sure we'll be doing a lot of complaining over the next 30 minutes or so. Well, thanks for joining me again, return guests to the show. Always appreciative of that. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about Bournemouth. As I mentioned, the match that we had in September was the start, at least, of that snowball getting bigger and bigger in a bad way for West Ham and really snowballing out of control. But for you guys, I knew you guys were in poor form, but I didn't realize, how poor form it's actually been. You guys have only won twice since in the last 3 months. I don't see any wins in October. And I see one win in November, one win in December. And ironically, those two wins were against Manchester United at home and then Chelsea away.
Yeah.
And we have only 2 wins in our last 14 matches, one of which was Chelsea away, and it was also 1-0 too. So I'm seeing a lot of similarities between us. I do think, and maybe I'm wrong, I guess we'll talk about it now. I do have the feeling that the Bournemouth fan base is a little, I'm certainly not saying you guys are happy with what's going on, but you guys haven't sacked Eddie Howe yet. Let's talk about that first. Where do you see Eddie? I mean, in his job security, is he on the hot seat? Is the seat just a little bit warm? Is it he has a long leash because he's Eddie Howe and what he's done for the club? What are the Bournemouth fans' sort of opinion on Eddie right now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I think that, and we spoke about this the last time I was on, about how the fans kind of really gather around Eddie Howe, and he's, our version of, the Messiah for us,
Right.
But I think now more than ever, that's kind of waning. Like, we're going into a new decade, and if you look back to where we started it, sure, it's better than we were 10 years ago, but that's not saying very much. 10 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And not much. We've kind of stalled out. I think we were really optimistic the last time that we had spoken. We were both really optimistic for our for West Ham and Bournemouth, that it was going to be nothing but up for the rest of the season. And then really that match for both of us, it's just been nothing but downhill. And we've kind of been pacing each other as far as how bad things are going. And I think that it says a lot that you guys have made. I think maybe you should have sacked Pellegrini before now, but
Yeah.
I think it says a lot that you guys are willing to have that conversation, whereas it's not even something that Bournemouth fans are really talking about much. It's just kind of Eddie Howe is Eddie Howe, and we love him, but I don't know that necessarily Bournemouth is the right fit for him at this point.
So it sounds like, personally, in your opinion, are you pretty close to wanting to sack him? Are you saying that you think you should sack him now? Or what is your personal opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little disillusioned by his style of management. I mean, obviously something's not clicking. And I just think at some point enough is enough. And it's not an easy decision by any means because there is such loyalty there.
Right.
And so much entwinement, but at some point that wears thin.
So you mentioned his management style. What about that style do you think is not really resonating with the club at the moment?
I think that personally, I think that he leans towards taking these younger players and trying to keep everybody. The loyalty that he feels towards Bournemouth, that's what he's trying to breed in his players, which is fantastic if it's working, and it hasn't been. I mean, Fraser, like he's at the end. Contract, and he more than likely is going to leave. Like there's really no talks right now of him staying. We're losing players that
Hmm.
are very, very good for us simply because like they're here for right now, but there's no that loyalty isn't forming and the team's not clicking. And we see like in the last transfer window, he just didn't do anything. I mean, he was just like, we can work with what we have, and I'm like, that's not good enough at this point. So I think
Yeah.
that management style of like, if we stick it out, we can be a big family, just isn't cutting it at this point.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I feel like there are a lot of similarities that you mentioned that we also feel in the West Ham fan base too. I think the main difference really is that we don't have a manager that um, is a club legend. Obviously, Manuel Pellegrini compared to Eddie Howe in terms of the stature within the club is a lot different. I'm sure maybe you haven't heard, but I'm confident that you have. Obviously, West Ham have been speaking about sacking Pellegrini for a while. You mentioned actually that you think we should have sacked him a while ago. You would be in the majority West Ham fan base for sure. I was actually of the mindset of having some hope, and actually, personally, the first time that I was set on Pellegrini out was after the Palace game, the Boxing Day game.
Mhm.
And especially after the Leicester game, I thought he needs to go, no doubt about it. But yeah, you would not be in the minority; you'd be in the majority in saying that. Um, but yeah, it seems like there are a lot of similarities, and one of those similarities, or I guess intertwinements between our clubs, is that we've been um, linked. I wouldn't say linked with. There has been chatter amongst the West Ham faithful of, when Pellegrini inevitably goes, who would we like to replace him with? And Eddie Howe is always mentioned on that. It's on the top of a lot of people's lists. But I do look at the results. I mean, you guys are sort of in free fall, and this isn't the first time it's happened. It seems like this is a bit of a pattern for you guys. Like, you start the season off really well, and then you go into free fall, and then you pick it back up, and just to survive. So, if you were recommending, I guess, to a West Ham fan like myself, and I said to you, Kimberly, I really, really want Eddie Howe, which, by the way, he's not my number one choice. Wouldn't hate it, but not my number one choice. But let's say, really, I'm all in on Eddie Howe. What would you say to West Ham fans that think that?
Well, I think as a Bournemouth fan, and like we had spoken about last time, my brother's been a West Ham fan forever. And like the thing that I
Right.
respect about your club very much is that you guys kind of know when you need to switch gears. And I think that's some. I think because you guys have gone through the relegation process and then come back up and then have faced it again, and you guys are kind of always in that, like, you start the season really well and then kind of drop a little bit, and you guys want that. Like, you want to stay in Premier. And I
Right.
respect that a lot. You guys do what you have to do to stay. And that's what I would like to see a little bit more for Bournemouth. And I think that when you rally around one person, especially management, like we rally around Eddie Howe, we're not fighting anymore to stay in Premier. We're fighting to keep Eddie, and we're fighting for that and what he was to the team instead of um, our actual standings. And I think
Gotcha.
that I don't have anything personal against Eddie Howe as a manager. I think that if he went to a different club, he could probably excel because he does do really well with young talent. And I think that if you guys wanted him, I would say go for it because he's not a bad manager. I think he gets a little bit too much into the fact that Bournemouth is his home and he feels safe there because there's never been any talks of Bournemouth going in any other direction. Um,
Right.
but at some point, like, you can't just fall back on, hey, I got us up, like, and that is what it is, and that's fantastic, and we'll always have respect for him for that reason, but you can't just cling on to one thing. If you're not succeeding with our club, maybe you need to move on, and we need to also.
Yeah. Yeah, that's sort of the feeling that I got from you at the beginning of this talk, which was, he's a good man. He has definitely good managerial qualities. He has been successful. Obviously, he took Bournemouth up, but maybe both parties, Eddie and the club, are being their loyalty may be blinding them a little bit to what's inevitably going to happen down the road.
Yeah, and I think recently we've seen a lot of clubs making decisions to go different routes with management. We've seen like a lot of turnaround with management, and we're just like not even considering it, and we're 2 points out of relegation zone, and it's not even there is no change on the horizon for us. We're not speaking about what we can do differently.
Mm-hmm.
We're just kind of continuing to move on, and obviously what we're doing is not satisfactory because we're right there.
Yeah, so it seems like it's like a situation where, the ship's going to go down with the captain in a way. Like, you guys are either going to go down with Eddie at the helm, or you're going to stay up with Eddie. But your loyalty is going to, and also maybe because again, there are some similar patterns to the past couple seasons, starting off well, sort of going free fall and then steadying the ship. Maybe the club is simply thinking, we've sort of been through this before, like we're still out of the bottom three. And we could probably steady the ship again. Eddie's done it before. He can do it again. I do understand though, like holding on to a manager for too long. I think we did that with our previous manager, Slaven Bilic.
Mm-hmm.
Because we loved him. He wasn't a club legend like Eddie Howe is with Bournemouth, but he did play for the club for I think 2-3 years. He was extremely well liked, extremely well respected, a very honest man, passionate about the club, wanted the club to do well. It just wasn't working out anymore. I think we held on to him for probably a couple months. Probably, I think we should have fired him after his second season, and his third season was just a disaster.
I think it's easy when you have somebody that does well by the team in like a specific, like we can point to, we came up into Premier under Eddie, and that's fantastic. Yeah. And saying that maybe it's time to move on is no disrespect to that and what he has done for the club. And I have my own personal, like, maybe he's not meant to be a manager in Premier. Like, he did very well by us to get us here, but maybe at this level it's just not working for him, and especially with our team. And that's why I kind of would love to see him go to another team. I mean, he went to Everton for a little bit and then came back, like immediately right back. And so I would love to see him go and see if he can succeed with a different team. And we'll always love and respect him. But right now, like, we're just not meshing.
Yeah, it seems like it's it's like a relationship. The two people may love each other and care about each other, but maybe sometimes things just run their course, and that might be something like that, where the relationship between Eddie and the club maybe will run its course, and maybe it's just them both denying that the inevitable maybe is coming. I know for certain. I mean, you guys can't. Well, I don't know. I was going to say you guys can't. I mean, if you guys lose your next 4 or 5 games, I mean, you guys got us, Watford after that, Norwich City, Brighton, Villa. I mean, those are all teams that are, around in and around the bottom. I mean, if you guys start losing those matches, I mean, you're going down pretty much. And it will be interesting to see, because do you know, by the way, Eddie Howe's contract situation and what that is at all? I don't. I'm not sure.
I'm also not aware.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if he's out of contract soon, because I know the West Ham owners are a bit cheap, to say the least. They would rather just sign a manager who's a free agent, so to speak, and not under contract. Because obviously, if you steal a manager that's under contract, you have to pay that fee. I'm going to look it up while we're talking. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of the vibe that I've got from Bournemouth, which is like, both the manager has loyalty for the club and vice versa. This has happened before in the last couple years, and that loyalty is going to probably stick around at least through the end of the season. And you guys are either going to go down with Eddie or stay up with Eddie.
Yeah, and I just think I really do. I respect it. I respect his loyalty to us. I feel like as Bournemouth fans, and with where we came from, especially in the last decade, I think a lot of us like don't even want to question Eddie Howe because it feels like how can you be a Bournemouth fan if you
Right.
don't love Eddie Howe? And it's just, it's not a ride or die situation. You can look back at a ton of players that West Ham has gone through and said, you know, he was so great for us at that point, and then it just, you know, maybe it didn't end well, maybe it did, but either way, like it comes to an end. Everything runs its course, and this point cannot just be maintaining. Just because we're staying in Premier, even though we drop and then rise a little bit, maybe we end, if we're lucky, in the mid area. Like we can't just be satisfied with that. Like we're never going to become a bigger club.
I mean, is that by the way, Eddie Howe's contract runs out at the end of this season, which is interesting. I thought I had heard that, but I wasn't 100% sure. Yeah, I could definitely see. I think Eddie Howe will be in high demand. Even if they were to go down, I think a Premier League club would, like West Ham, would be interested in snatching him up. However, the latest update of our managerial search is actually, it looks like West Ham's going back to David Moyes, who was the caretaker manager for us in between Bilic and Pellegrini. And I mean, West Ham fans do not like it. It's literally though, you know, you use this term a lot, a step backwards, right? It literally is a step backwards. You're literally going back to a manager that you essentially, I mean, technically he didn't get fired. He was just on a 6-month contract. It ran out. We got Pellegrini. But we're literally going back. And what does it say also about David Moyes? You know, he basically got the what's the term? The short end of the stick, and basically got like tossed aside for Pellegrini. And yet he's willing to come back to the club that did that to him just a year and a half ago. What does that say about Moyes? I mean, how desperate must he be? So a lot of West Ham fans are pretty bummed because not only are we signing David Moyes, but we are signing him what looks like, and Neil just said it too. Oh no, Neil said, yeah, if Moyes wasn't good enough 18 months ago, why is he good enough now? Yeah, I mean, we're signing him to an 18-month contract. So essentially it takes out Eddie Howe of the equation, and we're essentially with Moyes for the next year and a half. It's a very down time for the club. A lot of fans thought Pellegrini would work out. A lot of fans are praising the signings, and for whatever reason, it just hasn't. What have you? So, like going into this match, I guess we can start to focus ahead and into the new decade. First match of the new decade. As a Bournemouth fan, what have you, based on what you've heard about West Ham lately, what are your thoughts on the match? Are you confident, nervous? What are your opinions?
My first reaction is because you guys are 1 point out of relegation zone and we're 2, and going into the new year, there's all that kind of pressure too.
Yeah.
My first thought is it's going to be a grudge match. I feel like whenever we play each other anyway, it can be, I don't want to say violent, but it definitely gets a little more heated between us for some reason. It's not like we have like this deep feud or something like that, but I feel like every time we play, it's a little bit dirtier.
Okay.
So that's like my first reaction, and I hate to kind of be a Debbie Downer, but I feel like Bournemouth hasn't been showing up recently. I would love to say, oh, you know, we're 2 points away from relegation zone, like that'll kick us in the high gear. But like it hasn't been up until now, so I don't really know why. I'm seeing a loss for us. I hate to say it, but I think you guys have the talent. I think you guys haven't had the management this season. I really do think you guys, honest to God, have the talent. I think we're sloppy and we don't play like a team. We kind of are all over the place, and like the individual players are good, but there's no meshing of us as a cohesive team. And all it take is like a little bit of sloppiness for you guys to beat us.
It's interesting that you say all that though, Kimberly, because you know, like, oh, you guys haven't won in a while. Like I said, I think you guys have won twice in the last 3 months. I also believe I heard or read a stat that Callum Wilson hasn't scored in like 11 or 12 games. And I've mentioned this multiple times on this show. I've tweeted it out as well. There are really 3 golden rules to playing West Ham, which is 1, if your team hasn't won in a while, play West Ham. If you have a guy that hasn't scored in a while, or maybe he's a new player and he hasn't scored for your team yet, or he's a former West Ham player, he'll score. You can count on it. And so, like, those two rules especially apply in this situation. Bournemouth haven't won in a while. I mean, you guys haven't won you guys are away. So you guys did win away in December. I forgot we're not at the Vitality, but anyways, just 2 wins in 14. Callum Wilson hasn't scored in 12 matches or so. I believe Josh King is the former. He was in the academy, the West Ham academy. He has scored against us multiple times over the years. Even Matthew in the comments says Callum will get a hat trick against us. But I mean, I just think, you say all that, Kimberly, and it's true. You guys have been struggling. It's been a poor run of form for you guys. But I mean, whether we're in good form, which we're not, obviously, we're in awful form, we're just the gift that keeps on giving. And if I was a Bournemouth fan, I would actually, I mean, it's easier said than done on my end of the table, but I would be confident if I were you. I would be extremely confident.
I think for me, we have Cal, and he is fantastic. And, like, he was getting eyed by some of the bigger clubs a little bit ago. And like, that's obviously great for our ego and as well as Cal's. I think kind of one of our downfalls was when Fraser kind of checked out, and we had spoken about this the last time.
We did, I remember.
Yeah, I thought back then, and I'll continue it. I think that he is completely checked out from our club. I mean, Arsenal's has been eyeballing him all season, and that's great because I think he's a great player, and I love him. And if he can go do well with somebody else, fine. I don't think, though, that he's been putting in the effort that we need. He's great with assists, especially with Cal. He loves to set him up and stuff like that. And I don't think that with Ryan Fraser's heart not in it, it's been kind of hard for Cal to pull his side of it. And I just think, again, especially those three, it was Fraser, Josh King, and Cal Wilson were really playing together as a team inside the team. And I just think all three of them have kind of just been nothing as of recently.
Yeah. I do remember us speaking about Ryan Fraser. Why do you think he's checked out? I'm just curious. I think we talked a little bit about it last time, but I can't quite remember the reasoning. Is it simply because, I mean, is it simply because he wants to move? Is it because he's just playing poorly? Is it both? What is it with him?
Yeah, so he was in talks to move over the summer, like in between last
to Arsenal, right?
Yeah, so he was already in talks with that, and then it just didn't work out for this season. And ever since then, he just has not come back. Like, his head has not been in it since the beginning of this season. I think, too, we had David Brooks last year, who played phenomenally for us and worked well. He made, like a little foursome with them. He just fit right in and was doing it. And then he got hurt, and he's been out. So I just think that Fraser is kind of playing with like a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, that like he's not getting the support he needs by not having like David Brooks and everybody like that around. And I think he's just got one foot out the door.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good attitude to have, for sure. I mean, I feel like, if you're playing with the club, you should just play your best. Especially if you want that move to a big club, I think you should that's all the motivation to continue playing better. I'm sure what you're saying is true. I also think I wouldn't be surprised if, on top of that, though, he's maybe putting a little too much pressure on himself, or at times has put too much pressure on himself, causing that could really mess with your confidence or your mentality, and that's a huge part of sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think last season he was really starting to prove himself, and you could see him start to rise in the boards overall. Like he was like one of the top assists amongst all the Premier League, and that's huge for a club like Bournemouth to get anybody on those charts.
Right. Oh yeah.
I think that was definitely like a good ego boost, and you're probably right. I hadn't thought about that. The pressure that kind of puts on him also, and then to have a club like Arsenal step in and even show any kind of interest probably
Yeah.
has been a lot for him. And he was nursing an injury on his leg. And I get it. I do. I just don't see the passion there that used to be.
That's dangerous. Yeah, that's the type of player that you don't want in your club. That's the type of player that that West Ham has signed over the last several years. Players, old, washed out, looking for one last payday. It's definitely, I could speak firsthand, it's definitely dangerous to have those types of players in your locker room. That attitude and that mentality can easily permeate throughout a locker room, spreading to other guys, and it essentially becomes a virus. And in close quarters, as you know, viruses can get spread a lot easier. So it is dangerous. That all being said, we'll wrap this up soon. But before we do, we have to obviously give a prediction. I believe. Do you remember what you predicted last time for the match?
I think I said 2-1. I thought we were going to win 2-1. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. And I think me and Nate, I believe, was the other guy. I think we both picked 2-2, actually, a 2-2 draw. So, yeah, interested to hear, especially given how poor both of our sides have been. Massive game. It's an absolutely massive game. But what are your thoughts? Score prediction here.
I'm thinking 1-0 for you guys. I don't even think we're gonna be able to. If I look back, the goals that we've been able to make recently have kind of, I think, been luck. Like we score something and I'm like, I don't feel good about that. Like, great, lovely, but I'm not like, wow, that was great form. Look at that, we deserved that. And so I would not be surprised if we came up short completely.
Yeah, that when you say that, that goal against Chelsea was like pretty crazy. Like, I don't know how that ball like got on her. That was wild. I was like, whoa. Matthew Howard says 2-2. I like that prediction. Well, Kimberly, I definitely hope you're right. I think, oh man, this is tough because it's interesting because you guys have been struggling so much, and usually West Ham is the team that the gift that keeps on giving for teams that are struggling. They usually get points. We give out points for free. But I could also see the new manager getting. Man, it's hard. It's hard for me to predict West Ham winning. I'm gonna go draw here. Even Matthew said it. I can't see either team winning 2-2 or 1-1. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go 1-1 here. I first of all, I can't see us keeping a clean sheet. That's very kind of you to think. I can't see that. I hope you're right, but I can't. I do see us scoring, though. I do see us battling for the new manager. I believe it's going to be David Moyes. I do see us battling hard. I think the players liked David when he was here for 6 months. I think he brought a sense of structure and discipline. So I think they'll fight for him. You always get that new manager push to the first, in the first couple of games, you usually get that push.
Well, that's why I'm kind of surprised by the fact that, because I've been seeing on Twitter and everything like that you guys are not happy about him coming back to the club. And
the fans aren't.
Well, and I do understand the concept of like taking a step backwards, but I didn't 100% agree with you guys canning him to begin with. I mean, I understand the decision of the way that you guys want it to go, but on the same hand, I don't think he did wrong by you guys at all. I mean, you guys were facing a relegation zone. He got called in kind of as a saving grace, a Hail Mary, and he did what he was there to do. And so at that point, like, all I can do is respect that. And so I'm kind of a little nervous. You're absolutely right, of the fire that he's going to put underneath of you guys in the next few days to get it together for this match.
You hit on so many great points, Kimberly. So totally agree with you that, I mean, he did right by us. He came in and did what he was supposed to do. And we were safe pretty much the last 2-3 games. I mean, it got a little close, but we got the wins that we needed to. And he did do right by us. He did the job that he needed to do. I believe I was looking at it this morning. He got 32 points from 27 matches. Is that excellent? Is that great? No, but he certainly did it. And he also, people forget about this all too quickly. He made a brilliant tactical maneuver where he put Marko Arnautovic on top. as the striker. And it transformed the team. It transformed DeMarco's career. And it really gave us he scored double-digit goals as a striker. It was the first time we had done that in several years. He did that back-to-back years, the first time someone's done that in something like 15, 20 years for West Ham. So, you know, he definitely overall was positive. I agree with you. I think overall, I'm not saying I want David Moyes. I'm saying he's my ideal choice. It is a step backwards, and I get that. And I get being upset at the board for not getting someone else. I understand that. However, to say, oh, Moyes is shit, like I'm not going to get behind him. There are some fans in the minority, but there are some fans that are saying that. I'm like, I totally disagree with you. That just brings toxicity into the club. That brings negativity into the club. And the club need the fans more than ever. Now, listen, I'll be the first one to eat my words if Moyes loses his first 5 games and we're down in the bottom 3, which could happen. But get behind him. Get behind him. Like you said, he didn't do wrong by us at all. He did what he was supposed to do. And I want all West Ham fans listening to this to actually, if you're not behind David Moyes, assuming, again, it's not confirmed, but assuming he's the manager, get your ass behind him. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I think that he has something to prove after the way that his reign with you guys ended. I feel like he could come back really. He really hasn't done anything since he left you guys.
No, he hasn't done anything. He hasn't done any managerial work at all.
No, so I feel like if anything, the way that your relationship with him ended, and the fact that he has just been sitting around, if there was ever a time for a manager to step in and prove themselves, he has something to prove, and I think that that's a dangerous position to be in, especially with what you had said, where he stepped in and he started moving players around. I think that when you get a fresh pair of eyes like that, that can completely change a team. Because, like I said, I think you have very, very good players. I just don't think your manager was really bringing out the best in everybody.
Correct.
And so when you get somebody who has something to prove and has shown that they can kind of step in with fresh eyes and change some things up, I think that that can be dangerous, and that this match could be bad for us.
Yeah, the fresh pair of eyes, that's, you know, in a lot of avenues in life, that can always, you know, that second pair of eyes or that new pair of eyes can really catch something or look at something in a different way that could, yeah, like you say, in soccer terms, could, you know, tactically, you know, move someone somewhere or take someone off and sub someone else on. Definitely. I personally am just excited to not have Manuel Pellegrini as my manager anymore. As sad as it is, I'm excited. I'm excited to see, hopefully, some different tactics, some different football. It's just been so boring. It's been so lax and gutless and listless and lifeless. It's
there's a rejuvenation it brings to the fans when you make a decision like that, because you're gonna watch the match and you don't know what to expect now for the first time in a while. Because I feel like you guys have been in a slump, and you kind of can predict like what's going to happen because you guys are doing the same things over and over again and they're not working. When you get something like that happens, when you change a manager like that, or you get a great new player, something like that happens, you're going to sit down and watch this match and be like, I really don't know what's going to happen, and I'm excited to see. And that's really, I think, what has been surprising, like you were saying to me about the fans. You guys were so excited yesterday. You're like, finally, you know, like he's gone, let's celebrate. And then as soon as you get David Moyes, like that name being tossed around, everybody was all negative again. And I'm like, guys, you just don't know. I mean, it's better than where you were, the rut you were stuck in.
I understand the negativity, because again, it is a step backwards. I understand people saying, I don't want Moyes. I get that. I don't either. There are other guys out there that I would prefer. Totally agree with that. Totally. And who knows who knows if the board is just being cheap? Who knows if they have reached out to other managers and they simply said, no, not interested. It's probably a combination of both. We'll never truly know. Totally understand I don't want Moyes, but if he is hired, and let's just assume he is, yeah, you have to get behind him. You have to. He's the manager of our club. And like you said, he did not do wrong by us. And like I said, if you can, everyone in the comments, y'all, and you can say you don't want Moyes. Totally agree with you. I'm on board, man. I'm on board. But if he's hired, get behind him. I don't want to see any of these negativity, toxic. Oh, I'm not going to go to the stadium. I'm not going to get behind the team. Fine, then don't. Then don't support him. Don't watch him. I don't care. I could go off on a rant even more about that.
I think too, that even if you bring in the best manager that's available right now, it doesn't mean that he's going to click with your team. And I think you guys were really hoping, and this is just the impression that I've gotten, that you guys would get like a big, like a really somebody who's coming in with a really great like stats behind him. And that's great. And obviously everybody wants that. Nobody wants like, oh, the crappiest person to come in and manage their team. But on the same hand, if he is out there at the practices, he's doing these things and working with the team right now to see if he fits. And it's working. That could be a huge change for you guys. Like you guys couldn't rally before behind Pellegrini, and that's fine, and that happens. But if you can rally behind somebody, that's almost better sometimes than having the best manager come in. It's really about a vibe with the team and how that works together. And so I until I see how he or anybody else that you guys bring in and sign makes the team function as a unit, I don't really feel comfortable being like, oh no, he's the worst choice.
Yeah. Again, like get behind him. Paul Porter also says Pellegrini was the first manager we have ever had who, when given the tools, can and did win the Premier League. We've had 13 managers since 2003. It's not the manager, it's the players. I mean, so I personally think it's not one party or the other. I do think the players sometimes get overlooked when placing blame. I totally agree with Paul there. Let's not beat around the bush. The players are the ones that need to go out and execute. They have not. The last couple matches, it's obvious they weren't playing for Manuel Pellegrini anymore. I'm sure, again, his message and his motivational tactics in the dressing room had fallen on deaf ears, which is, again, why I'm excited to just get someone new, something fresh, right? Like you were saying. So,
and I think he was a great option for you when you brought him in. I think that you guys were pretty. I remember
Pellegrini or Moyes?
Pellegrini. I kind of remember
absolutely.
When you guys brought him in. It was very exciting.
Everyone was loving it. Everyone was loving it.
And I think that speaks to what I was trying to say of like, no matter how good the manager is when you first bring him in and how good he is on paper, if he doesn't work with your players, it's just not going to be a cohesive unit. And you can see that when you guys play. You guys haven't been a unit.
Yeah, we haven't. But it is a shame because the board did spend money. They did allow they did hire director of football Mario Husilos, who had worked with Pellegrini in the past, and they had similar, they were on the same page. They had experience together. Everyone loved it. Everyone said the board's finally doing, what they said they were going to do. I don't know why it went so wrong. I really, really don't. It's sad. I'm sad. If you would have told me that we would be in this situation in August, I mean, there's no way I would have believed you. I didn't think, some people said we're getting top 6. Had a few people who even say top 4. I was like, let's pump the brakes. But I was gunning for 8th, maybe 7th, just something to build off of our good finish last year. And man, it's gone so wrong. I'm sad.
Well, and even when we spoke in like mid-September, we both were very, very optimistic that we were both on the up and up. Like we were,
yeah. We both had good starts to the season. Yeah,
we were middle of the pack then, and we were like, it's nowhere but up.
We were above. We were. I think West Ham were 5th, and Bournemouth were maybe 6th or 7th.
Yeah, we were like 6th or 7th. We were always like kind of like eating at you guys. We're always like really close. And then I feel like. It's funny how you started this. The whole thing was, the last time we spoke, we were incredibly optimistic. And then really that match.
Now we're just depressed.
Yeah, the match between you and I feel like since then it has been nothing but downhill for both clubs.
It's actually a very, like I said several times, but it's a very similar, 2 wins in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 2 wins in your last 14 games, just like us. So, it's very similar. Well, we'll wrap this up, Kimberly. Again, really appreciate you coming on. Always a pleasure. And 1-0 for you, right? You said 1-0 West Ham.
1-0 West Ham.
1-1. We'll see what happens. But thanks again for coming on, Kimberly. Really appreciate the time.
Of course. Have a great New Year. Thanks for having me.